Next step then is to integrate our settings into our app. Now the way that the app currently works is that we have a payrise microflow that does various things. So if you've got one of these, what I'm going to do, in fact what I'm going to do is I'm going to go in and I'm just going to sort of empty that out so that we can use it with our new settings. So let's go back into my app, and our payrise microflow is here. I'm going to open it up. So that's left over from the work that we were doing previously. So I'm just going to delete these. We'll just recreate the entire thing. Delete. I'll delete this bit. And I'll delete this bit. There we go. So it looks like a base microflow. So just to recap, green circle is where the microflow will start, red circle is where the microflow will finish, and we have some data flowing into this microflow to do its work. Clearly, when we call this microflow, we're tapping on this button here, and this button is inside this data container. So Mendix knows the context, it knows we're actually displaying March's information. So when we tap on this payrise button, for example, March will flow in through this thing here, which is called a parameter. So all of March details will flow in here and it'll have the name. It's an employee object, like one row of the table. It's the March's details if we were viewing March, and that will flow into the microflow so we could work on it here. So we've got the employee, but of course this microflow actually needs the employee information, and it's going to need some of those values from those settings. So how are we actually going to get those settings into this microflow? Well, we've already done the work. We have a microflow called GetOrCreateSettings. What it's going to do is it's actually going to pull those values out for us. So what I need to do is run that microflow inside this microflow. So let's find the call microflow widget. Here it is under action call activities, microflow call. So I'll pop that on there. I'm going to double tap, and we're going to say what microflow we're going to call. We're going to call the one we've already defined, GetOrCreateSettings. And you'll see it creates a thing called settings. And that's great. Well, now we've got the employee and we've got all the values from settings that we can use inside our app. So let's change our employee now. So an employee flows in, we're going to grab the settings values, and now we're going to use those two things. We're going to change the employee. So I'm in the change object. I'm going to pick the employee, and I'm going to say we're going to make a change. So I'm going to tap on new. I'm going to pick the actual member that we're going to change. In other words, which bit of this are we going to change? We're going to change Sal, and remember the way that we do this, we type a $sign, up will pop the things that we can use inside this to construct the expression. So I'm going to double tap on employee / Sal. So it's always useful to remember the $sign and the / will enable you to construct the name of something. What are we going to do to employee Sal? Well, let's multiply it by $, settings, / and it's the payrise field. There we go. Now, I know this is going to generate an error message, and it's an interesting one. And the key is in the fact that Sal, when we created the entity, Sal was an integer. So of course, payrise is a decimal, like 1.1 or something. So our problem is that if we multiply an integer by a decimal, we could end up with a decimal. And we're going to get a problem here because, of course, we're trying to save this into something which is a whole number. So we're going to have to fix that. Now, I've done that quite deliberately because I want to indicate sometimes you're getting to doing a microflow and you suddenly realize, oh no, it's going to have a consequence on our domain model. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to save that, and we'll come back to this in a minute. What we'll have to do is we'll have to go into our domain model, okay, into employee, and you can see there's going to be some consequences of this, because sal needs to actually be not an integer, but we need it to be a decimal, like that. Okay, so I'm going to save that. But now there might be consequential changes inside our pages that display employees. So let's go into the add edit employee page. Now it's possible that our sal value might suddenly change. Let's have a look at that, see if it's still linked to the attribute. It looks, it's not generating no, seems as if it's going to be okay at the moment. Maybe Mendix has handled it. Thing we can do, we can just try it out in a minute and see if we get some error messages. So here we go. We're going to take sal and we're going to times sal by the pay rise. Now I think we're okay. Let's see what happens if we save it all and give it a go. So it's going to reconstruct the app. So if you remember, we had to make a slight change to the domain model. It looks as if we didn't need to make a change to the forms, the pages that make up the interface. I think we're going to be okay. Let's see what happens. App is running. Let's try it out. So, bit of luck. Let's go into settings. I've got a pay rise of 1.1 now. Because of the way that salary is going to be used here, we're going to multiply salary by this. So 1.1 would be a pay rise of 10%. Okay, let's go into here. Let's go into someone like March. March is on 21,000. So let's tap on the pay rise button and see what happens. There we go. It's increasing the value every time. Let's cancel it. Let's say we went into the settings and we say that pay rises of 5% were going to be allowed. Go back into March and now I can click pay rise and you can see it's 5% changes each time. So you can see how the microflow is running. It's pulling in those two values. It's pulling in the emp from inside emp, we're going to use that sal value, but then it's also pulling in the value from the settings object. And we can multiply those together to give the people a pay rise of a certain percentage. Next step is to use the other bit of that settings, which is the are pay rises allowed.